It's time for Wrestling for the Culture, where we take a look inside to see what the wrestlers of color have been doing this week. So, this week's Wrestling for the Culture is different, as I interviewed Doric Sam. He is a writer for Wrestling Inc., but recently he contributed to The Undefeated, brought to you by ESPN, where he wrote a feature story on the EST of NXT, Bianca Belair. He talked about her rise and how she is a star coming. I urge everyone to check out this piece. It's a great, especially if you love feature stories like I do, you'll love this one, I promise you. So, no more intro. Here we are. Here's my interview with Doric Sam. Doric, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm pretty good, man. So let's before we get into the article, let's talk about your career a little bit, man. How'd you get into wrestling and how long you been a fan?
I've been a fan since I was about 10 years old. Don't laugh, but I got started with the invasion angle. So I missed the whole Attitude Era. But after that, I kept watching like all throughout high school a little bit. Eventually I stopped, as I got older, I developed other interests. I came back around like 2013, probably. My little brother, he's 13 years younger than me. He took a real liking to it, so I started watching again with him. And then last year, I began writing for WrestlingInc.com, the largest independent wrestling site in the world. And I've been covering WWE and MMA for them ever since.
Nice. So I gotta ask you. You said you got started with the invasion angle, and that didn't turn
Yeah.
you off.
It didn't turn me off. That's what attracted me, because I didn't know how much I missed in the Attitude Era.
Okay. So yeah, I've seen, and I'm pretty sure obviously you're in the business, so
Yeah.
you've seen some things where people have rebooked the invasion era and whatnot. So that's why I thought it was funny where you said this is where you started as
Yeah.
opposed to ended per se.
Oh no, it like I said, I didn't want you to laugh at me, because people usually hate that angle. So I understand it. Looking back on it now, I understand why it's so disliked. But at the time, like being 10 years old, not having seen wrestling before that, it attracted me.
No, I can appreciate that, to be honest with you, just because as somebody who was waiting for that to eventually happen and take place, I wasn't, dare say, disappointed at the time. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't like the pay-per-view, but the stuff leading up to it and going into that year's SummerSlam, I really
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed it. So, I can appreciate you kind of falling in love with that.
Yeah, those promos were great. Like with Stone Cold, he was conflicted, and then he comes in and beats everybody down. Those promos were great. That's what got me.
Yeah, so were you there before the pay-per-view or right afterwards?
I want to say like right before the pay-per-view. Like I didn't watch the pay-per-view, but it was like right the lead up to the pay-per-view.
Okay, cool. So if you don't mind, let me ask you, how did this article come about? As far as writing on Bianca Belair.
I pitched a different story to the Undefeated, and they actually sent me back that they were more interested in a story on Bianca, and so I researched her and saw that she had a really interesting story. Starting as a track star, and then becoming a CrossFit competitor and having to quit basically because of an untreatable condition, her shifting rib syndrome, and then coming into NXT and really excelling. So I pitched them the story in say June. Bianca was on her honeymoon at the time, so we had to wait a little bit to get the interview done, and I was able to speak to her. She's a really great person, really easy to talk to, and yeah, we decided to promote it around Evolution.
So, were you disappointed that she was not a part of Evolution?
Definitely. I expected at least for her to be featured in the Women's Battle Royal. I thought that they were going to have more entrants than the ones they announced. I thought
Mhm.
maybe they were going to have some surprises, and not just for her, but for the other women in NXT as well. They have some really great competitors. I thought that there was room for maybe matches on the pre-show. Um, Bianca and Nikki Cross had an incredible main event 2 weeks ago on NXT TV, and I expected them to get a chance to maybe showcase the girls that they have in developmental. Evolution was great. It was probably up there with the best main roster pay-per-views of this entire year. So there's not much to be disappointed, but I did expect her to be featured, and I thought that they could have done that, and it was kind of sad to me that they chose not to just have them in the audience. That was it was kind of a waste to me.
Yeah, I agree. Just somebody who is is a fan of hers, like you said, the story right now with her and Nikki Cross, which I'm really hoping does not fall to the wayside
Mm,
with everything being revealed as far as Aleister Black's attacker, unless
yes.
they put Bianca Belair in the title picture.
Yeah.
So when you what was your first thoughts when you first saw her compete as a performer? What was your first thoughts?
I went when I started doing my research. I went back and watched some of her matches, her early matches. Of course, she she really had the athletic ability down. It was really a little. She needed growth in like crowd control and working with the audience. But then you saw in the Mae Young Classic that she really improved that. She mastered that. Her match with Kairi Sane in the second round of the Mae Young Classic was almost flawless. So I was very impressed with her athletic ability and the things that she was able to do in the ring. I've never seen women do some of the things that she's done.
Yeah, I can certainly agree with that, man. Now I got to ask you about the shifting rib syndrome that
Yeah.
she has. And obviously, I know like you're not the medical expert, but if I could ask, what did you learn about that, and how, if there's anything that you could share that she says how it, I know she says sometimes she knows like when it's coming, she can anticipate when I read the piece.
Yeah.
But do you think this would be something that would hinder her down the line?
Um, she told me that it started from overtraining, and they said it was untreatable. It was there's no surgery, there's no rehab, there's no remedy, there's nothing she could do. So basically, two of her ribs would like do somersaults, like they would flip
Oh,
and detach from her sternum and her back, and they were it was causing her great pain. Being a powerlifter, a CrossFit competitor, she wasn't able to do that. She said that being a wrestler, she's figured out some stuff to stay away from, stuff not to do, and ways to avoid having that happen to her. But she said that in the event that it does happen, like she's able to pop it back in. She's able to reattach her rib, basically.
wow. Yeah, I read that, man. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
Um, Now, one of the things I love in the piece that you opened up with was the hair. So
Yeah.
I'm reading this, and I'm gonna give you credit where credit is due, and not to say like I would take any away, but this is what I appreciate, and this is why I had to reach out to you
Yeah.
because you hooked me as soon as I read like the first couple of lines when you said the whack. And you could hear the smack. Like I heard it as I was reading,
Yeah.
So I can always, as somebody who's studied journalism in school, I can always appreciate a good writer.
Thank you.
So thank you, man. I appreciate that.
I do have to give a shout out to my editor for
Mhm.
that, Matt Wong. He suggested that we lead with that, so I will. I also give credit where it's due. He pushed for that to be the lead, and I was able to write it up, and he was able to edit it. He's a great editor, and that's what came out.
Oh, he's a wrestler fan too.
He's not actually, but
Okay.
we were able to work together, and he was able to make it work.
That's the magic I've learned in this business.
Yeah.
As I told you off air before, that I was, ESPN, obviously people know owns the Undefeated, and
Mm,
I worked at ESPN for 2 years. And one of the things I learned, you'd be surprised how many of the editors aren't sports fans,
mm,
but they just have that eye for great video. And a lot of times that helps when you're a production assistant, you need to bring your highlight. Now you might have to tell them if you, let's just say this is the 1990s, you might have to tell them Scottie Pippen is number 33 because they'll know Jordan, but they won't know Pippen. They might not even know Dennis Rodman. So you
yeah.
might have to point that stuff out, but they understand good video. And your editor, understood what it would take to get somebody like me to appreciate that.
Yes.
Um, but speaking of the hair, what's
Hmm.
your thoughts about her using it? And what was the first day, your first reaction when you first saw it? Especially, I know you mentioned in the Mae Young Classic one with Kyrie saying.
Uh, it's incredibly unique. It's like we said in the article, like it's something that nobody had ever seen. It's something that I've certainly never seen. And when she did it, particularly in the Kyrie match, the sound it made, it was at the perfect time. Like there was a lull in the crowd, like the crowd was really quiet, and you heard the crack across Kyrie's chest. So I was blown away. And then when she kept doing it, like it kept making the same cracking sound. So I was really impressed. Like I said, I think I was looking at crowd reactions. Some fans cheered, some fans booed, and some fans didn't know how to react. Like I was like, "What is that? Like, how do you react to that?" So I thought it was very unique. It's something that only she can do, and I think it's very impressive that she's able to make it work like that.
Now, you remember when her and Mandy Rose back in February had their online exchange about the
Yeah,
hair?
yeah, I did see
Um,
that.
what was your thoughts about that?
It was funny. I mean, Bianca's clapback game is super strong, so um, I thought it was a little overblown.
Mhm.
Uh, Mandy's thing was more of a hair flip, and it didn't even compare to Bianca's thing. So it was just some fun on Twitter. But Bianca, I think her Twitter game is strong. So
Yeah, Twitter game is definitely strong. Another thing in the piece, man, you have is the GIF of her picking up Candice LeRae.
yeah,
And I think that just goes to show her strength. Is she someone that you see being able to win the NXT Women's Championship from Shayna Baszler?
no question. Um, I thought that they were building towards her versus Kyrie Sane,
Mhm.
but with Shayna winning the title, it looks like those two are going to be featured in a program going forward, probably leading into War Games. But she's without a doubt a future champion. They keep building her character. You know, she has the undefeated thing going. She's speaking more and more backstage segments. We still haven't seen her in an in-ring promo. You know, in front of the NXT universe, we haven't seen her speak there. That's a real test
Mhm.
for her, and I'm looking forward to whenever they do that. But without a doubt, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You know, the power clean to military press of Candice LeRae. That's the first time I've ever seen that. Even I've never seen a male competitor do that. You know, so she took the time to think of what can I do from my fitness background and showcase a wrestling skill, and it was a beautiful thing that I saw. So as long as she keeps performing like that, she keeps working on her character, I think she's without a doubt a future champion.
And last but not least, gotta ask you. You said future champion. Obviously, believing that you feel that she'll go do the same thing at the main roster.
Hmm.
What do you believe? And I hate to. It's no disrespect to Jazz, Naomi, Alicia Fox. Do you believe she has the potential to be the greatest African American women's wrestler in the history of the business?
She definitely has the potential for that, but that it would not be any disrespect to any of the African American female wrestlers that came before her, because over time, people improve. You know, more things are possible. So with her being still developing in her wrestling career, she's still very early. She started training in 2016. You know, so she's 2 years into her wrestling career. So however long she chooses to stay in this business, she can go as high as she wants to go, and she can definitely be the greatest African American female wrestler ever to be in the wrestling ring.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is Mr. Doric Sam. Doric, any final thoughts or any and last, can you tell people where they can find you?
Oh, I'm at Doric Sam 83 on Twitter, DoricSam 83. I write for WrestlingInc.com. I also do a lot of MMA recaps for UFC events. So hopefully this article on Bianca Belair will be the first of many. I'm hoping to do more stories like that, more feature stories. That's my favorite part of writing is feature writing. So hopefully we'll have more to talk about sometime in the near future.
All right, man. Well, I definitely appreciate it, and definitely will look forward to having you on again, man.
Definitely. Thank you for having me, and I'll definitely be interested in coming on again.
All right, you're welcome anytime.
Thanks, man.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Doric Sam of Wrestling Inc. Like I said, contributed to The Undefeated. So stay tuned. As you see, the show is evolving. Wrestling for the Culture is evolving. So stay tuned, as I will be bringing forth some more interviews with wrestlers, wrestling writers, fellow friends, So I appreciate you guys tuning in. Until the next time, folks, I'm Brian H. Waters. Make sure you subscribe to the Wrestling Realm. Make sure you subscribe to Break It Down with Brian H. And make sure you have voted for us in the Wrestling Podcast Awards. Until next time, so long, everybody.